Briana, what do you use as a pep talk, or what are some things you do to get ready for the day that can help with imposter syndrome?
So for me, I can say I'm not a huge pep talk person. I know that works really wonderfully for some people. So if it works for you, by all means, go for it. For me, it tends to feel a little bit fake it till you make it kind of thing for me. It doesn't feel authentic to my personality. And so I found that thinking about what qualities I want to bring to whatever challenge I have that day is much more helpful. So for example, if I have a really tough meeting with a project partner, I might seek to, specifically listen to what their concerns are, and that's how I'll judge whether that day was successful. Or I might try to, share information in a certain way, or encourage people to see things in a new light. That one's a little bit harder because, it still depends on other people, but I've really found that kind of specific goal-oriented way of approaching interactions, that it's really rooted in qualities as opposed to specific outcomes, helps me a lot with the imposter syndrome feelings.
I agree. And the only thing that I would add to that is that I have tried to move away from goals as a rule, the word goals, and think more about directions and intentions, thinking about what skills and qualities I can bring to a group of people or to the work that I'm doing that day or that week. And think about it in terms of, I want to move in this direction versus I'm going to get this, and this done. Because sometimes for me, facing a list of achievements takes me away from the process and what skills and qualities I can bring to the process. If you've experienced imposter syndrome at some point, how have you effectively figured out whether it was all in your head or if your doubts were an accurate self-assessment?
You kind of don't, which is, I don't know, probably not a very comforting answer. But part of my experience of imposter syndrome, right, is that I am trying to compare myself, my performance, my qualifications, everything, with all of the information I have about my entire lived experience. And other people are not viewing me with that volume of information. So it's easy for me to find data points that support whatever argument I'm trying to make for myself, that I can find times that I've screwed things up. I can find times that I've done really well on things. And so this really plays into sort of trusting that the people around you have granted you responsibility, or asked you to take something on because they think that you're capable of doing it. And at the end of the day, you're never going to be the most qualified person to do that task because there isn't one. And so it's really just kind of learning how to sit with that little bit of uncertainty about whether you're the best possible person.
And just to build on that, I think there is enormous value in understanding that we are operating in a landscape, and many of us are working in CX and in UX in a field that is ever changing, and a lot of new information is emerging constantly. So when faced with imposter syndrome about tackling either a particular part of your job or a task, it's important to remember that while you may not feel qualified for that particular thing, there is a chance that a great number of other people, when tasked with the same thing, would have those same feelings. And in essence, we can't decide for ourselves if we are the least qualified, because as Briana said, we don't have access to all of that information about other people's life experiences and skills and trainings. You just don't have view into that. So all you can really do is focus on your own expertise, even if you feel in this particular instance it's limited, and understand that, as Briana said, you've been tasked with this because someone has put their trust in you, and you can just do the best you can with what you've got. How can you support coworkers or peers who might be experiencing imposter syndrome but not be talking about it?
I think a lot of us, our natural impulse when we know somebody is feeling a little bit down is to try to build them up and say like, no, you're great at everything. But we've already seen that that's not always the most helpful thing to do, because somebody who is experiencing those feelings will often kind of just brush them off, brush any compliments off, and think that you're just saying that to be nice and because they can tell that you know that they're down on themselves. I think that one thing that could really help with that sort of imposter syndrome feeling is maybe trying to learn a new skill with that person, kind of side by side, so that the person that you're working with or alongside also gets to see that you too are a person who's learning something for the first time. And you can kind of get the opportunity to practice learning a new skill and asking questions together. So that can be a really great strategy for someone.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I've actually had some great experiences with doing a one-on-one over Teams, even on video call, trying to figure something out for either a software or a platform that I'm not super familiar with. And myself and my lab mate can be on the call figuring it out together and realize neither of us 100% knows how the other person's job is going to work with this, and we need to work on this together. But we're coming from a place of honesty, and instead of saying, yeah, I'll get that to you tomorrow, and then sitting in isolation and trying to figure it out and not feeling smart. So by opening up the conversation and being a little bit honest of, I could use your help on this. Could you jump on and help on it? I know developers do this a lot when they pair on exercises, but I think all of us could benefit from that type of one-on-one conversation. How do you advocate for yourself when battling imposter syndrome?
So it really comes down to feeling like you deserve to advocate for yourself, which is I'll go much deeper than anything that we can cover in Q&As here. But to work with a specific instance where you need to advocate for yourself, I think it can be really helpful to think whether you would encourage somebody you know in a similar situation to advocate for themselves. And when it comes to something that might be a little bit bigger, say like the promotion, the raise, the being placed as lead on a project, to actually write down your qualifications for yourself, because you can see why you might need to pursue that opportunity and why you are deserving of pursuing that opportunity. And when it's something smaller, like really it's that thinking about what you would say to somebody you care for or respect and how you would tell them to approach the situation.
And I think something I might add there as well is when it comes to advocating for your own needs, even in the work environment you find yourself currently, sometimes it's hard to reconcile the feelings of imposter syndrome with the respect and honoring of your own needs, because there can sometimes be a tendency to believe that if you were, start the list, better, smarter, more accomplished, had different skills, that things would be easier or take less time. And since that's the case, many people with imposter syndrome find themselves working longer hours, later nights, earlier mornings to try to make up for that somehow. If you can step back from the situation and see that you do need to advocate a little bit for yourself and your needs, and to take some time for yourself, take some time back from putting it into work, then remembering that that is a valid concern and that you are valid in advocating for that is, I think, the first step. So like you said, Briana, recognizing that you are worthy of advocating for and making sure that you are doing that and placing those needs above those of your, your day job, your work, the thing that you're working so hard towards.
Yeah, advocating for yourself is really a lifelong practice. And generally, if you have difficulty doing it in one area, you might have difficulty doing it in other areas. So the more you can practice that in general, the easier it'll become in the workplace.
Briana, thank you so much for joining me here today for the Vanguard CXD Wills Imposter Syndrome talk. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fantastic.
And we will pass it back to Ashley and our panel. Thank you so much.